The train station flickered under broken lights. Rain tapped softly on the roof, like fingers drumming a restless memory. The soldier stood alone, boots wet, breath visible in the cold. A man brushed past him. No eye contact. Just a slip of folded paper pressed into his palm. He opened it. 4 words, written in a child's handwriting. You forgot me. His hand trembled. A crumpled drawing slipped from the fold, a house, a son, 1 child in a window. He turned. The man was gone. But something colder than rain crept into his chest. Something he thought he buried. The rain hadn't stopped. It became part of the air now, not falling, just hanging there, like grief that refused to land. The soldier walked through the shelter compound with his collar up, boots sloshing through thin puddles. Everything smelled of wet cardboard and bleach. Inside the main hallway of the evacuation center, the light buzzed faintly. Fluorescent. Cold. He paused at the board. It was still there, a long stretch of cork with hand-printed rosters pinned in uneven rows. Names. Ages. Arrival times. All categorized by day and bus number. He scanned the paper like he was reading a prayer he didn't believe in. Column B, Week 2. Zone D. His eyes found it. Mila Brenner. Age 7. A black line had been drawn through her name. Sharp. Final. He didn't remember crossing her off. She hadn't arrived on the bus. That much he remembered. But she had been scheduled. He had seen her on the clipboard. Zone D was his section. His thumb traced the line across her name. She was supposed to be there. He reached into his coat pocket and unfolded the note again. You forgot me. A tremor passed through him, not from the cold, but from something older. A buried moment. A pair of eyes in a window. A child pressing her hand to the glass as the truck rolled away. He had dismissed it. Just a reflection. Just fatigue playing tricks. But now the drawing in his pocket showed the same house. Same window. Same lonely sun. He stepped back, heart pounding. He didn't even realize the center's nurse was standing behind him until she spoke. You looking at the old logs? She asked gently. He turned. Mila Brenner. Do you remember her? The nurse squinted, then looked at the line. Her expression shifted, not surprise, but unease. Like a memory she tried not to have. She was the quiet one, right? Wouldn't speak. Clutched that little giraffe toy all the time. Yes, he said, though he hadn't remembered the giraffe until now. But once she said it, it fit. Perfectly. She waited, the nurse said, voice low. I think, 2 or 3 days. Slept on the porch. We thought someone had picked her up before the rescue came. His throat tightened. No one did. The nurse frowned. Are you sure? He nodded. I was the one scheduled for her sector. Silence stretched between them. The rain picked up again, louder now. Beating harder on the tin roof like 1,000 tiny fists. I thought someone else took her, she whispered. She was just gone the next morning. I figured she made it out. But Mila didn't make it out. She didn't arrive. And her name was crossed out without any confirmation. The soldier turned away from the board. His jaw locked. She waited, he said, mostly to himself. And I never came. He walked down the hallway to the supply room. It was dim inside, stacked with crates of old rations and water bottles with faded labels. He pulled out his field log, the one he kept during the second week of the flood, and flipped through the pages. Zone D. He had jotted down times, coordinates, names checked off. There was no mention of Mila. Not even a question mark beside her name. He stared at the blank space. How had he missed her? He remembered the moment now, the road washed out, the houses barely visible through the fog. The truck had to turn around early. He'd radioed for a delay. They said, "Move on." No time. One of the houses had a swing set. Painted yellow. Swaying wildly in the wind. That swing set was in the drawing too. He looked at the note again. At the handwriting. It wasn't angry. Just hurt. Like the soft voice of someone who still believed in you, even after you stopped showing up. He folded the paper carefully this time and tucked it into the inside pocket of his coat, close to his heart. Back at the board, he stared at her name again. Mila Brenner. Age 7. He found a pen on the desk nearby. With a hand that didn't feel like his own, he crossed out the black line someone else had drawn, and rewrote her name in fresh ink beneath it. Mila Brenner, still waiting. The nurse watched from the doorway but didn't say anything. Sometimes silence was the only way to honor the truth. As the rain softened again, he felt it, the faintest pulse of duty, not to protocol, not to orders, but to her. He wasn't done. Not yet. He would find out what happened. Why no one came. Why she was forgotten. And why, years later, someone made sure he'd remember. His hand brushed the note once more. The child's scrawl whispered like breath against his chest. You forgot me. Not anymore. The street was quieter than he remembered. Even the wind seemed hesitant to move here, like the air itself held its breath around the charred bones of what once stood. Zone D. He parked the jeep at the end of the hill and stepped out slowly. The tires crunched against wet ash. Trees bowed overhead, leafless and skeletal, their blackened limbs frozen mid-reach. Houses stood like hollow mouths, windows shattered, roofs caved in like memories collapsing. But it was the silence that felt wrong. He walked past the first house, a sagging roof, a scorched lawn. Second house, front porch collapsed, stuffed animal half melted on the step. The third house made him stop. There, barely visible through the soot-stained siding, was a swing set. Yellow. Rusting. The one from the drawing. His boots found the gravel path leading up to it. The yard was overgrown now, nature slowly taking back what the flood and fire had left behind. But near the door, he saw it, a line of tiny white stones arranged in a curved shape. A smile. A child's doing. He stepped closer. The front door was still there, barely hanging, one hinge loose. But what made him freeze was the chain. It was bolted from the inside. The hairs on his neck stood. He crouched and examined the lock. Whoever lived here hadn't tried to escape. They had tried to wait. His breath fogged the air. He stood and gently pushed the door. It creaked, giving way just enough to peer in. Inside, everything was frozen in the moment disaster struck. A coat rack with a pink jacket. A small wooden chair tipped over near the window. On the far wall, faded drawings still clung, sun, house, a stick figure holding a balloon. He blinked. One of the drawings matched the one in his pocket. Same shape. Same colors. Same single figure in the window. A girl, waiting. A scream stayed trapped in his throat. It didn't belong in this house. Not now. He took a step inside. The floor moaned beneath him. The smell of smoke still lingered, like a warning. In the kitchen, the clock on the wall was stopped at 4:12. He stared at it. Burnt hands. Time frozen. Like her. He moved to the back room, a child's bedroom. Walls pale blue, ceiling cracked. There was a stuffed giraffe on the bed, its fabric damp, one button eye missing. He reached for it with a trembling hand. Holding it felt like holding her. His knees gave out, and he sat there, on the edge of her bed, in her room, surrounded by what she must have clung to while the world outside forgot her. He tried to picture her face, but it wouldn't come. Just the drawing. The note. You forgot me. No, he thought. They forgot you. But the echo inside pushed back, so did you. He rose slowly and began to scan the room for anything, a journal, a note, a photo. Then, in the corner, half buried under a fallen beam, he found it, a plastic box. Inside, papers, report cards, a laminated ID. Mila Brenner. Photo showed her staring off camera. Brown hair. Wide eyes. Unsmiling. He swallowed hard. She had a name. A life. She was real. And someone erased her. He stepped outside and lit a flare. A slow burn of red smoke curled into the gray sky. He marked the house. Then, he reached into his coat, pulled out the note, and folded it gently back into the girl's ID case. Tucked it beside the giraffe. I see you now, he whispered. A crow startled from the tree above. Wings flapped sharply in the stillness. He looked around. None of the houses on this street bore the usual rescue marks, no spray-painted dates, no initials for bodies found, no X to signal search teams had passed through. It was as if Zone D had been skipped altogether. Erased. He pulled out his phone and took photos, the house, the lock, the swing set, the missing markings. His fingers moved automatically, training taking over where emotion blurred. But inside, something old and deep cracked open. He wasn't just remembering. He was waking up. A voice in the wind seemed to whisper, "You turned around. You left." But he hadn't known. No one told him they'd skipped this zone. No one said the maps had changed. He had been told to move forward. Told the area was cleared. He looked back at the house one last time. Its windows dark, like closed eyes. And then he noticed something new. Near the doorframe, carved faintly into the wood beneath the soot. I stayed. He stepped back. No. Not carved. Scratched. By small fingers. The guilt sank deeper than any wound. He felt it press into his chest like the cold, slow, creeping, inescapable. The only thing left to do now, was to find out why. Why no one came. Why the maps changed. And who told her to wait? The records room was too quiet. Not the kind of silence that brings peace, the kind that feels staged, swept clean, like someone had been here just long enough to erase what mattered and leave the rest to dust. He stepped inside. The light above flickered once, then steadied. The metal file cabinets were lined like gravestones, each drawer labeled with faded numbers and letters. He found the right one, D-273. Zone D. It screeched open, metal grinding against rust and resistance. Inside, folders leaned tiredly against one another, corners curled from years of being ignored. He thumbed through the tabs. Brenner. Brenner. Mila Brenner. Nothing. His jaw clenched. He pulled the entire section out and spread it on the long metal table. Dozens of names, households logged, tagged, marked with colored tabs indicating evacuation status. Most were stamped with a rough red check, evacuated. Some were gray, unconfirmed. He ran his finger down each list. Twice. Still no Mila. But he remembered her. Not just from the swing set drawing or the grave silence of her room, he remembered her from before. A briefing. A list on a clipboard. The commander's voice, Zone D has 4 minors, 1 unaccompanied. She had been that one. He closed his eyes. In the blur of orders and rising floodwaters, her face hadn't registered. But the note, the drawing, the scratch on the door, they came back clearer than anything else. Someone had wiped her out of the official memory. But she had existed. He opened the command logbook on the shelf and scanned the weekly briefings. Evacuation routes. Supply manifests. Zone risk ratings. And then, a yellow file clipped to the back. Zone D, budget review, approval required. He flipped through the pages. Every sector had been color-coded. Zones A through C marked in green, priority. Zone D? Marked gray. Next to it, handwritten in pen. Low occupancy. 2 houses vacant. 1 minor pending. Delay evac if necessary. His throat tightened. Delay evac. As if a child could wait through smoke and water and silence. As if she were an entry in a column. He turned the page. A typed memo. Signed with initials, SG. He didn't recognize the name. But he took a photo. Every page. Every margin note. Every number. Then, tucked behind the packet, he found a photocopy of a shift report, driver manifests. The section labeled Zone D pending pickup was blank. Someone had whited it out. Not crossed out. Erased. He sat down hard on the stool. The room swayed slightly. Or maybe it was just the weight of it, the growing sense that someone had made a decision, and hoped it would be buried with the ash. He closed the folder and stared at the wall, trying to imagine her in that house, waiting. Holding her toy giraffe. Hearing distant sirens and not knowing they weren't coming for her. A knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. It was the nurse. "I brought you something," she said softly, stepping in with a file box in her arms. "What is it?" he asked. "Old medical files. We had to condense after the relocation. But I kept some, just in case." He opened the box, flipping through vaccinations, injury reports, flu checklists. And then he saw it. Patient, Mila Brenner. A health report, 6 months before the floods. Age 6. Quiet, underweight, mild anxiety. Preferred to draw rather than speak. She was real, he said, almost a whisper. The nurse nodded. She was one of the invisible ones. Sweet. Polite. But you had to notice her. He looked up at her. Why did no one come for her? She hesitated, then said, there was talk, some kids weren't priority unless they had parents present. No one ever claimed Mila. She was living with her aunt, but, she trailed off. The aunt left town early. Evacuated by car. He froze. And didn't take her? The nurse's eyes filled. She told us Mila was with neighbors. I think, she lied. He stood. She wasn't with anyone. He took out his phone and showed her the photo of the house. The door. The scratch. I think Mila stayed in that house alone. Days, maybe. The nurse sat down, hand over her mouth. Oh God. She waited, he said again. For someone who never came. The silence between them was unbearable. Finally, she reached out, placed a trembling hand on the folder. What are you going to do? He looked at her, no longer just a soldier, but something else now. Something heavier. I'm going to find out who erased her, he said. And why? Then he folded the note, slid it back into his pocket, and left the room. Outside, the air was colder. Sharper. But in his chest, something had ignited. Mila hadn't vanished. She'd been erased. And someone had signed their name to that silence. The coffee shop on the edge of the old district still served in paper cups. The kind that leaked heat too quickly and collapsed if you squeezed too hard. He sat by the window, untouched cup in hand, staring out through streaks of rain on the glass. Outside, the city looked tired, buildings grayed with time, streets marked with the scars of floods long past. He didn't hear the man approach. "Mind if I sit?" The voice was low. Rough. Like gravel under boots. The soldier turned, instinct alert. The man standing there wore a maintenance jacket, threadbare and faded, with city insignia half scraped off. His face was weathered. Not old, but worn, like someone who'd seen fire from too close. A pale scar ran down from his temple to his jawline, cutting through a beard left too long to care. He sat without waiting for permission. "I saw your flare," the man said. The soldier narrowed his eyes. "You were there?" "Zone D," the man nodded. "I was with the fire crew. We came in the day after the evacuation." The soldier said nothing. His pulse quickened. The man reached into his coat and pulled out a small object, plastic, singed at the edges. A toy giraffe. It landed between them on the table with a soft thump. "I found this by the bed," the man said, eyes steady. "She never made it out." The soldier stared at it, the memory of the girl's room flooding back, the cold, the soot, the silence. "We weren't told anyone was still there," the man continued. "Dispatch said the zone was cleared. But we checked anyway." He paused. Looked away. The door was chained. From inside. A beat passed. The soldier's voice came out low. "I saw that too." The man nodded. "She didn't try to run. She waited." The silence was louder than the rain outside. "They told us," the man said, his jaw tightening, "that budget constraints forced route changes. Said Zone D wasn't a priority." "That's not what the files say," the soldier muttered. "They say low occupancy. Delay if necessary." The man gave a bitter laugh. Translation: no one watching. No one that matters. The soldier studied him. "Why tell me this now?" The man leaned in. "Because someone made the decision to leave her. And someone else covered it up." The soldier tensed. "You know who?" The man tapped the scar on his face. "You don't get this without learning to listen. I heard things. On the radio. From dispatch. From the cleanup crews after." He reached into his jacket again, pulling out a wrinkled notepad. Flipping pages slowly, deliberately. "There's a name," he said. "Same one kept coming up during the recon briefings. Sid Grant." The soldier froze. "SG. The initials from the memo." "Logistics coordinator," the man added. "Promoted after the flood. Quiet guy. Good with numbers. Knew how to bury things." The soldier took out his phone and showed the memo photo. "This him?" The man nodded once. "That's the one." He scribbled something on the back of a napkin and pushed it across the table. His office moved. City Development Wing now. They gave him a corner desk. The soldier picked up the napkin. An address. Second floor of a government annex. The same building where the new city safety plan was being drafted. He wrote her off, the man said, voice flat. Then he got a raise. The soldier felt his hands ball into fists beneath the table. His breath slowed, heavy and controlled. She died because someone decided a spreadsheet mattered more. She didn't scream, the man added quietly. That's the worst part. No claw marks. No mess. Just, curled up on the bed. Holding that toy. The soldier looked at the giraffe again. It stared back at him with one intact eye. Quiet. Eternal. She thought someone would come, he whispered. She trusted you, the man said. That landed like a blow. The soldier flinched. Because it was true. He had told himself the orders were clear. That someone else would double-check. That mistakes happen in chaos. But none of that mattered. She had trusted him. And he had driven away. The man stood, scraping the chair softly back. "Be careful," he said. "People like Grant, they don't like ghosts coming back." He started to walk away, but paused. "I keep hearing her name in the quiet," he added. "That's why I kept the giraffe." Then he was gone. The soldier sat still for a long time. Rain traced lines down the window beside him, like tears on old glass. He reached across the table, picked up the toy giraffe, and turned it in his hand. The seam at the neck had started to fray. A small voice echoed in his memory. "You forgot me." "Not anymore." He folded the napkin, slid it into his coat beside the drawing and the note. Then he stood. There was a man in a corner office who thought he buried a child in silence. But silence had a sound. And the soldier was ready to make it echo. The municipal annex smelled like fresh paint and forgotten promises. Everything was too clean. The kind of clean that made you think of things scrubbed away, not for safety, but for secrecy. Marble floors, brushed steel accents, a fake plant by the elevator that stood too straight to be alive. He walked in with the kind of silence that came from training, but this wasn't a mission. Not in the traditional sense. This was something heavier. At the front desk, a young clerk looked up with disinterest. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked without really asking. He lifted a clipboard from his coat. Blank forms, but stamped with enough faded government ink to pass. "Records transfer," he said flatly. She blinked, hesitated, then waved him through. Second floor. Development wing. The hallway was lined with posters: "Safer City, Stronger Tomorrow, Every Life Counts." He paused at one. A group of smiling children holding hands under blue skies. Stock photo smiles. None of them were Mila. He turned away. At the end of the corridor, a frosted glass door. A plaque, "Sid Grant, Strategic Operations." The door was ajar. Inside, the office smelled like printer toner and old lies. A sleek desk. A row of cabinets. A coffee cup still steaming. And maps. Dozens of them. Rolled, pinned, spread across the far wall like a quilt made of decisions. His eyes scanned quickly. Zones marked in green. Blue. Yellow. Not gray. He walked to the largest map. Week 2, Evacuation Strategy. His fingers traced the lines. Zone A, B, C. No Zone D. He checked again. The road name stopped just before Mila's street. Her block, the entire quadrant, was missing. Erased. Surgically. His heart beat faster. He stepped to the file cabinet. Top drawer, Flood Logistics. He rifled through. Old maps. Initial drafts. Color-coded by area and risk. And there it was. Map 4C, Draft 2. Zone D clearly labeled. Routes highlighted. Mila's street, her house, marked for pickup. Dated, 4 days before the flood. Next folder, Map 4C, Final Approval. Same file name. But when he opened it, Zone D was gone. Not grayed out. Gone. He checked the approval stamps. Grant's initials. SG. His hand trembled slightly. Not with fear. With clarity. This wasn't a mistake. This was a decision. He pulled out his phone. Snapped photos of both maps, front and back. Captured the file tags, the timestamps, the revision notes. And then he heard it. A soft footstep behind him. He turned. Sid Grant stood in the doorway, holding his coffee cup like a shield. "You're not from Records," Grant said. His voice was calm, oily. "Practiced." The soldier didn't respond. Grant stepped inside, closing the door behind him. I've seen your face before. You were one of the early zone leaders. Silence. I know why you're here, Grant added. And before you start throwing around accusations. I don't need to, the soldier said. He held up the 2 maps. I have proof. Grant didn't flinch. Just sipped his coffee. Those drafts were part of a logistics trial. Not final. They were approved. By committee. Signed by you. Grant walked to the desk, calmly setting his cup down. Look, there were thousands of decisions made that week. We had to triage. Focus on density. On numbers. Your little ghost story. Her name was Mila. The words caught in his throat but didn't leave. He wasn't giving Grant her name. Not yet. You left out a zone, the soldier said instead. A child died because of that. There were hundreds of deaths, Grant replied coldly. Some unavoidable. Some, unfortunate. The soldier stepped forward. You changed the map. I adapted it, Grant snapped. To fit budget, time, resource depletion. You know how it works. No, I know how it's supposed to work. Grant's smile twisted. You're not going to get a parade for this. No medals. No headlines. People don't want to dig up old ghosts. They want to move on. She waited, the soldier said, his voice soft. She waited for us to come back. That pierced something. Not guilt, Grant didn't feel guilt. But irritation. A crack in the polished mask. You think one little girl matters more than an entire operation? The soldier stared at him. She mattered enough to be erased. Grant stepped back. You have nothing, he said, reaching for the phone on his desk. The soldier turned and walked out. But just before he closed the door behind him, he said. I already sent the maps to Child Protective Services. Grant's hand froze above the receiver. The door clicked shut. The hallway outside was colder now. Shadows longer. The fake plant by the elevator had fallen over. Or maybe it always leaned like that, he hadn't noticed before. He walked past the poster again. The children still smiled. None of them looked like Mila. None of them ever would. He stepped into the elevator. The maps in his pocket were warm from his body. And the note whispered again in his mind. You forgot me. No. Not anymore. It wasn't much of a graveyard. Just a quiet stretch of earth behind a church that hadn't held service in years. The grass grew uneven, and the stones leaned like they were tired of standing. There were no names chiseled in marble here, just small wooden crosses, numbers carved into them with a trembling hand. Plot 48C. No flowers. No offerings. No visitors. But he knew this was the place. He stood in front of the wooden marker, the wind brushing the back of his neck like a whisper too soft to catch. In his hand, he held the giraffe. The one with the fraying neck and one eye, its fur worn down by smoke and time. He knelt and placed it gently at the base of the cross. This is yours, he said quietly. It never belonged to anyone else. The ground smelled of rain. The sky hung low, thick with clouds that hadn't decided if they would break. He ran his hand over the carved number, tracing it slowly. Mila's grave. But it didn't say her name. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small tag, one he had made that morning. It was simple. Just her name, etched into a piece of brass. Mila Brenner. He took out a nail and a small hammer from his satchel. With slow, deliberate taps, he fixed it to the cross. Each strike echoed louder than it should have. There. Now she was not a number. Now, at least in one place, she was real. He sat down on the cold ground, coat soaking through. Didn't matter. He needed to stay. He needed to say what he hadn't. I didn't know, he said. His voice felt strange here, like it didn't belong. Like it would sink into the earth and disappear before it could reach anything that mattered. I thought they checked your house. Thought someone else came. He looked down. I told myself that a lot. That someone else must have come. He paused, eyes fixed on the brass tag. But the truth is, I didn't check. The words tasted like rust. I moved on. Took orders. Followed protocol. Trusted the map. His hand brushed the cross again. You were there. In that house. Waiting. A tear fell, unnoticed. And I drove away. There was no answer. Just the rustle of leaves and the soft creak of tree branches above him. I saw your window. I remember now. The swing set. Your hand on the glass. He pulled the drawing from his pocket, the one from the note. Unfolded it carefully. Smoothed the wrinkles with the edge of his palm. I saw you. I just didn't know what I saw. He laid it on the grass beside the giraffe. I can't go back and fix it. His throat tightened. But I can carry it. I will. He let the silence stretch. Wind tugged at his collar. A few drops of rain fell, soft and slow. Then he reached into his coat one last time. The note. He read it again. The words in that jagged, innocent handwriting. You forgot me. He closed his eyes. I didn't forget you, he said. I froze. It was the most honest thing he'd said in years. Not just in that moment. In all the ones after. In the months of silence, the shifting blame, the way he let his memory dull the truth. He had frozen. Like so many did. Because remembering her meant remembering what he didn't do. He placed the note beneath the cross, weighing it down with a stone. Then he rose. Took a step back. The brass tag caught the light, faint, flickering through the clouds. Her name shimmered for a moment, like a heartbeat breaking through stillness. Mila Brenner. Not a number. Not a forgotten line on a report. A child. He stood there until the rain came for real, not hard, but steady. Cleansing. Cold. He didn't move. He let it fall. Let it soak through the coat, the silence, the guilt. Only when the drawing had begun to curl at the edges did he turn away. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. She was no longer forgotten. But neither was the man who had erased her. And the next time he walked into a room, it would not be in silence. It would be with her name on his lips. The boy looked nothing like her, not at first. He was taller now, 15 maybe, but carried himself like someone older. Shoulders drawn up like armor, eyes that scanned every corner of the room before settling on anything. He stood in the doorway of the outreach center, backpack slung over one shoulder, fists tucked into the sleeves of his hoodie. The soldier recognized him before a word was said. He had the same silence. The same pause before entering a room. Miles Brenner, the soldier asked gently. The boy nodded once. Didn't speak. They sat across from each other at a long, dented metal table. A clock ticked too loudly in the background. Outside, kids shouted from a schoolyard, the kind of everyday sound that shouldn't feel strange, but it did. Because it didn't belong in this moment. The soldier slid a worn folder across the table. Inside, photos, copies of maps, the signed memo, the altered report. I thought you should see this, he said. Miles didn't open it. He stared at the man sitting across from him. I know who you are, he said. Voice like stone, cracked, steady, but tired. You were the one assigned to her zone. The soldier nodded. I was. You left her. A pause. Deep. No defense. I did, the soldier said softly. The boy looked away, jaw tightening. She waited for you, he whispered. The soldier closed his eyes for a moment. I know. Miles reached into his backpack and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. He unfolded it slowly. A collection of letters, creased and faded. Colored drawings, some smeared. One of them was the same, the house, the window, the sun that never looked warm. She used to write to me, Miles said. After our mom died, I got placed in foster care 3 counties over. She stayed with our aunt. The soldier didn't interrupt. She used to write every week. Told me she missed me. That she drew me pictures. Then one day she wrote, he paused, fingers tightening around a paper. The soldier waited. She said, he said I was too quiet. That's why they left me. The soldier felt the air leave his lungs. She thought it was her fault, Miles continued. Thought if she talked more, smiled more, maybe they would have come back. The soldier leaned forward, voice barely a whisper. She wasn't too quiet. We were too loud with excuses. Miles looked up. And for the first time, his eyes weren't angry. They were broken. She was 7, he said. She waited on the porch for 3 days. They told me later. Neighbors saw her. Alone. She said someone was coming. A soldier. I should have been, the soldier said. I thought the route was cleared. Miles opened the folder now. Slowly. Looked at the papers. His eyes stopped at the map, the one with Zone D missing. She wasn't a mistake, he said. She was a calculation. The soldier nodded. Miles stared down at the papers. At the line through her name. The initials. The stamp. Then he whispered, why would anyone erase a child? The soldier answered with silence. Because there wasn't an answer that would ever make sense. They sat there a long time. Then Miles pulled something else from his bag. A small journal, battered, edges water-stained. She kept this. Wrote in it when she couldn't sleep. He passed it over. The soldier opened to a random page. I heard the truck today. I think it was him. I hope he brings the giraffe. Another page. The windows are loud when it rains. I pretend it's just tapping. Like someone saying, hello. He closed it. Held it gently. She never blamed you, Miles said quietly. The soldier swallowed hard. But I did. I deserve that. The boy looked at him long, then said, she wouldn't want that. The soldier met his eyes. What would she want? Miles didn't answer with words. He reached into his hoodie pocket and pulled out a folded drawing. It was newer, crisper, the lines more deliberate. It was a courtroom. People sitting. A judge. 2 parents in the corner. And in the center, a small girl, standing. Next to a man in a uniform. She'd want people to know, Miles said. The soldier stared at the drawing. His throat tightened. He nodded. I'll make sure they do. They stood. Miles offered the journal back. The soldier hesitated. You should keep it, he said. Miles shook his head. She waited for you. The soldier took it. And for the first time in years, it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a vow. The old operations trailer sat on the edge of a field, its metal shell rusted and peeling, forgotten like so many things from that week. It used to buzz with dispatch orders and radio static, now it was just another relic. The padlock on the door was rusted but loose. One hard pull, and it gave way with a sigh of metal fatigue. Inside, it was stale, paper dust, spilled coffee stains, boot scuffs still etched in the floor like ghosts pacing. He moved carefully, headlamp sweeping across crumpled maps, old memory boxes, a torn vest hung from a nail like someone meant to return for it. He found the briefcase in the corner, beneath a shelf of mold-stained files. Black leather. Heavy. Locked. He set it on the desk, fingers tracing the initials pressed into the edge, SG. Sid Grant. The lock was old, a simple turn. No password. No code. Just a decision to open it or not. He did. The hinges creaked as it unfolded. Inside, a stack of folders, neatly arranged, wrapped in a plastic sleeve to protect from moisture. On top, a manila envelope labeled Adjusted Zones, Final Draft. His breath caught. He slid it out and opened it. Inside were maps, but not public ones. These were internal drafts, some marked, classified, OPS only. And there, in red pen, were the markings. Zone D, strike. Next to it, a note scribbled hastily. Low value return. Fuel cost too high. Save resources for denser sectors. He kept flipping, and found a memo dated the night before Mila died. Signed by Grant. Co-signed by 2 logistics aides. A line stood out like it had been burned into the page. Clearing Zone D is a non-viable use of personnel. Authorization to skip. His hands tightened on the paper. He read the next few pages in silence, emails printed out, time-stamped phone logs. One memo from a mayoral advisor. The fewer sectors marked for rescue, the better the city's numbers will look. We can frame it as a tactical maneuver. Press optics matter. Press optics. He sat down, heart pounding. She wasn't just forgotten. She was sacrificed for the image of control. He reached deeper into the briefcase. At the bottom, a flash drive taped beneath a divider. He peeled it free and slid it into his coat. Then something else caught his eye, a small photo, creased and water-damaged. A group shot. Command staff lined up outside the trailer. Grant in the center, grinning, arms folded. The mayor. Logistics team. People smiling for a camera, just days after children were left behind. And there, far off to the side, blurred, head bowed, was himself. He hadn't remembered the picture. But there it was. Proof that even when you weren't paying attention, the camera caught what you tried to forget. He stared at the photo, then tucked it into the journal Miles had given him. She needed to see what the adults had done. A sudden crack of thunder split the silence outside. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then harder. The roof pinged with it, a dull, rhythmic tapping. He closed the briefcase gently, not out of respect, but because now it didn't matter. The evidence no longer lived in secrecy. It lived in copies. In words that would soon surface. He stood and looked around the trailer one last time. This was the place decisions were made in air-conditioned calm. While children sat on porches waiting for headlights that never came. He pulled a marker from his coat. Walked to the far wall, where the emergency whiteboard still hung, its surface dry and blank. And in thick black ink, he wrote. One child waited. You counted fuel. Then, beneath it. Zone D, Mila Brenner. Age 7. He stared at it for a moment. The tapping on the roof sounded like fingers on glass now. Like rain pretending to be a memory. He walked out into it, let it hit his shoulders, his face, the envelope in his hands. Didn't run. Didn't hide. Because the truth had weight. And now, finally, so did her name. The television was mounted too high on the wall, angled downward over the shelter's common area. Its volume was just low enough to demand attention, but not quite loud enough to drown out the quiet. He stood there, coffee cooling in his hands, surrounded by the weary shuffle of people waiting for housing approvals, food stamps, lost paperwork. The kind of place where things slip through cracks too wide to notice. But not today. Today, a girl's name broke through. This just in, Channel 6 has received documents tied to the 2022 flood response scandal. The soldier stepped closer. Newly released evidence suggests that an entire residential sector, identified internally as Zone D, was deliberately excluded from emergency rescue routes due to budgetary constraints and logistical reprioritization. The screen shifted to the map, the one he had sent. Red lines, grayed out zones. His photos, his scans. It was all there. The child believed to have died in this zone, Mila Brenner, age 7, was never listed on the final rescue rosters. Her home address, marked on original drafts, was later removed before public release. The documents bear the initials of a city official now identified as Sid Grant. A pause. Then the anchor leaned forward, not for drama, but gravity. Channel 6 has also obtained an audio clip. Viewer discretion advised. The screen went dark. Then, a voice, faint, childlike, distorted by static and echo. He said, "We'll save more if we skip her area." I was too quiet. That's why they left. The soldier closed his eyes. That voice, it was hers. Or close enough to her memory that it reopened something raw. The doctor had recorded her. That moment, the whisper Miles had described. And now, it filled every living room, every car stereo, every late-night TV glow. The anchor came back on screen. In response, City Hall issued a statement denying any knowledge of map alterations. But public pressure is mounting, with calls for full investigation. Protesters have already gathered outside the Department of Strategic Operations. The footage cut to a small crowd outside the glass building. Signs. Toys. A drawing held up to the cameras, her house, the window. She waited here. Another child held a stuffed giraffe by the neck, dragging it across the steps. The soldier watched from the corner of the room, unnoticed. He didn't want thanks. He wanted silence to have a reckoning. An older man beside him turned and muttered, "Damn. They left a kid to die." The woman next to him whispered, "People should go to jail for that." A boy, no older than Mila, looked up and asked, "Why didn't someone come for her?" And no one answered. Because the right answer would have broken the air. The screen flashed again. A photo of Mila, her school ID picture. Not smiling. Not scared. Just quiet. Unseen. Until now. His phone buzzed. A message from the reporter. "We aired it. More coming. She's their headline now." He replied with one word. "Good." He slipped out of the shelter and into the street, where dusk pressed against windows like it was trying to listen. He walked past alleys, cracked sidewalks, vending machines blinking forgotten lights. Everything felt still, but not quiet. Not anymore. Somewhere, the truth had been set loose. And like water breaking through a weak dam, it wouldn't stop now. He walked toward the courthouse, where more papers would be filed. Where Grant would soon be called in. Where a microphone might wait, asking him how a spreadsheet became more important than a child. He wouldn't answer, of course. But the public had heard her. They had heard her whisper. And sometimes, a whisper on TV is louder than any scream. At the corner, a girl stepped out of a shop with her mother, hugging a toy giraffe. It wasn't hers. But it was the same. The soldier paused. She looked at him. Just for a second. And though she didn't say anything, she tapped her fingers softly against her coat sleeve. Like rain. Like a voice that would never be erased again. It started with chalk. Just a single word, scrawled in pale blue on the steps of City Hall. Mila. By the next morning, there were more. Zone D. She waited. We remember. And then came the toys. A giraffe. A cracked doll with soot-stained arms. A pair of child's shoes, muddy but placed together, toe to toe, like they were waiting for a small body to return to them. The soldier stood across the street in the gray dawn, hands deep in his coat, eyes fixed on the slow-growing vigil. No signs. No chants. No megaphones or angry slogans. Just silence. And the objects left behind by people who understood that some things could only be said without words. By mid-morning, the media showed up. Cameras clicked, anchors whispered into microphones. But none of the protesters spoke. They just stood. Some knelt. A little girl held up a piece of cardboard with shaky marker lines. "Don't erase us." Behind her, her mother placed down a drawing, a crude sketch of a house with a swing set. One window darkened in crayon. The soldier crossed the street, moving through the quiet crowd. A woman touched his sleeve. "You were the one," she said softly. The soldier who found the map. He nodded once. She didn't thank him. She just squeezed his hand and placed a folded piece of paper in the growing pile. By noon, the steps were full, layers of toys, raincoats, letters sealed in plastic, drawings soaked in early drizzle. No speeches. Only that one word at the top of the steps, now retraced in bold chalk. Mila. A few people lit candles. Others left school IDs of their own lost siblings. A boy placed down his toy flashlight, the kind used during storms, and turned it on. Its soft beam cut across the concrete like a signal. "We see you," it seemed to say. The soldier found himself near the center now. Not speaking. Just watching. Then a voice beside him, one he hadn't expected to hear again. "Miles?" He turned. The boy stood with a group of teens, holding a sketchbook tight against his chest. Taller now. More composed. But his eyes still carried that same silence. The kind only children of disasters knew. Miles stepped forward and knelt before the toys. He opened his sketchbook, tore out a page, and laid it down. The drawing was different this time. A courtroom, again. But this time, the girl stood in color. She wasn't in shadow. And beside her, in uniform, was the soldier, looking at her. Not past her. Not through her. At her. The crowd seemed to lean closer. Breath held. Miles stood up and turned to face them. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. "They said she was too quiet," he said. "But you're all here because you heard her." Someone began to cry softly in the back. He looked at the soldier then. "She waited for you. And now we're waiting for them." He didn't need to say who they were. The glass doors behind them, City Hall, stayed closed. Blinds drawn. They were watching. Everyone knew. Inside those doors, power sat in offices, hands hovering over statements, scrambling for damage control. But outside, the city remembered a girl who once pressed her fingers against a window and believed someone would come back. Someone had. The soldier stepped forward, kneeled beside the giraffe toy he had once found in ash, and placed something beside it. The journal. Mila's. He opened it to the last written page, a half-finished line in pencil. "I think he will come. I think." He placed a rock on the page so it wouldn't turn. Let the words face the sky. Let the silence finish her sentence. The vigil continued into the night. Candles flickered. Rain came, but no one left. Not until someone inside those doors came out. And when they did, when the mayor emerged, flanked by aides, blinking into the camera lights, the protest didn't yell. They simply turned their backs. Every single person. Silent. Unmoved. Because sometimes silence is louder than outrage. Sometimes, it is the only language power truly hears. The soldier didn't speak to the mayor. Didn't meet his eyes. He just stood there, still, quiet, listening. To the rain. To the still air. To the memory of a girl who had taught them all what it meant to be heard without ever raising her voice. The courtroom felt colder than outside. Not in temperature, but in atmosphere. As though the walls themselves had absorbed too many years of silence and were now holding their breath. The soldier sat on the second bench from the front, uniform clean, jaw set. He wasn't here for spectacle. He was here for her. The judge entered. People rose. Sid Grant sat at the defense table, suit crisp, face unreadable. He didn't look at the soldier. He didn't look at anyone. His hands stayed folded in front of him, like he was still calculating something. The first hour passed in documents, prosecutors reading out evidence, statements entered into record, timelines constructed with quiet authority. And then the sketch was introduced. It was passed from hand to hand in a clear sleeve, a child's drawing, simple and unblinking. The courtroom. A small girl standing in color. A man in uniform beside her. The judge peered at it for a long time. His brow creased, not from confusion, but from something deeper. As if the simplicity of it was harder to bear than all the spreadsheets and signatures combined. This was drawn by Miles Brenner, the prosecutor said, the brother of Mila Brenner, the child who was removed from the official rescue maps. He wanted the court to see how his sister might have looked, if someone had simply arrived in time. There was a rustle in the room. Not movement, emotion. Contained but present. The drawing was set on the easel at the front, standing in view of everyone. Then came the journal. Each page read quietly. The one about the rain sounding like tapping. The one about waiting for a truck. The one unfinished. I think he will come. I think. The judge's voice broke slightly as he read it. Then came the recordings. Her voice, soft, scratchy, almost too faint to hear. He said, "We'll save more if we skip her area." Gasps from the back. A woman dabbed at her face with a crumpled tissue. The soldier didn't move. He had heard it already. Lived with it. But in this room, it no longer lived in the shadows. It was evidence. It was truth. The prosecutor turned to the witness bench. "Call Staff Sergeant Thomas Elkin to the stand." He stood. Walked to the front. Took the oath. Sat down. "Sergeant Elkin," the attorney began, "do you remember the moment you learned Mila Brenner had died?" A pause. He looked forward. "I never forgot it." "How did you come to learn her zone had been removed from the rescue plan?" "I found an old map," he said. "Then I found the real one." The prosecutor handed both exhibits to the court clerk. The judge studied them. "And did you find any record of a decision?" He nodded. There was a memo. Signed by Sid Grant. Grant shifted slightly but didn't speak. The soldier continued. "They called her house a low-value return. Said the fuel cost was too high." His voice stayed calm, but the weight behind it pressed into the room like a storm gathering above rooftops. "She waited," he said. "That's all she did. She waited and trusted someone would come." The prosecutor stepped back. No further questions. Silence held the room. The defense declined to cross-examine. And then, from the side doors, came a surprise witness. A woman, thin, hair grayed at the temples. She walked slowly, eyes cast downward. "Mila's aunt," someone whispered. She took the stand. Her hands trembled as she held the mic. "I told them she was with neighbors," she said. "I lied." She looked up at the judge. "I couldn't handle her. She was so quiet. So still. I thought, someone else would take her." Her voice cracked. I didn't think anyone would know. Her words hung there, sharp as broken glass. And then, softly, the judge spoke. There's something you should know, Miss Brenner. He turned the sketch toward her. The girl drawn in color. She waited for you too. The woman broke. Covered her face. The courtroom didn't move. Later, the judge gave his ruling. Sid Grant, guilty of criminal negligence, document falsification, and obstruction. He didn't react. He only looked down, as if trying to calculate how long it would take before her name was forgotten again. But it wouldn't be. Because when the court adjourned, no one left right away. They lingered. Watching the drawing. Watching the soldier rise, and place the journal beside the easel. He turned to the gallery, scanning the faces. And then, one hand rose. Miles. In the back row. The soldier nodded to him. And for just a second, he imagined Mila there too, sitting beside her brother, legs swinging from the bench, watching the room she'd changed without ever speaking a word. The drawing stayed behind that day. The last thing to leave the courtroom. A silent record. Of what it looks like when a child is finally heard. It was raining again. Not the kind that falls loud and angry, but the soft kind, the kind that soaks slowly through fabric and memory alike. The train station looked exactly as it had months before, flickering lights, chipped benches, people coming and going in that tired, quiet rhythm cities learn after long grief. The soldier stood alone near the platform, collar up, bag at his feet. His role in the trial was finished. The files had been submitted, the press had moved on. Grant was awaiting sentencing. The mayor had resigned under pressure. And yet, there was no relief in him. Only stillness. The kind that settles when truth has done its part, but healing hasn't yet begun. He turned as the doors behind him slid open. And there, through the slow haze of steam from a nearby food cart, stood the stranger. The same man. Same worn coat. Same quiet presence. The one who had handed him the note. He approached like he had the first time, with no hurry, no greeting. Just presence. Then, wordlessly, he held out a photograph. The soldier hesitated. Then took it. It was small, grainy, edges curled from time. A photo of a girl, Mila, standing on a porch. Not smiling. But not afraid. In the background, the swing set swayed just enough to blur. The soldier's throat tightened. She forgave you, the stranger said. It wasn't a guess. It was a statement. The soldier looked up. Who are you? The stranger didn't answer. Just stared at the photo for a moment, as if memorizing it again. I followed the noise, he said. The silence was too loud to ignore. Were you her neighbor? Not exactly. Family? No. The soldier waited. The stranger looked at him then, directly, his eyes not old, but ancient in a different way, like someone who had watched too many people forget things that mattered. I was like you once, he said. I knew how easy it is to move on when the list says, cleared. A pause. But she didn't make it easy. The soldier looked down at the photo again. The girl in the picture, drawn in chalk, left on steps, whispered about in living rooms, testified through sketches, was now framed in memory, held between two hands that would not let her fade. She waited, the soldier whispered. The stranger nodded. But now, he said, others wait differently. Because of her. A family passed behind them, parents and two kids, bundled in coats. One of the children held a map, hand-drawn, covered in marker lines and circles. The stranger watched them go. Maps are funny, he said. You draw them to avoid getting lost. But sometimes, it's the ones you leave off that say the most. He stepped back. Rain fell heavier now, tapping against the metal bench beside them. The soldier looked down again at the photo, and then, before he could speak, the stranger turned and walked away. No goodbye. Just the echo of quiet steps disappearing into mist. The soldier stood there a long moment. Then he looked up. And noticed something. On the bench, where the stranger had been sitting before, was a notebook. He walked over. Opened it. Inside, dozens of pages, names, addresses, zones. Not official records. Stories. Handwritten accounts from people forgotten during the disaster. A woman who waited 3 days with her disabled son. A man who rescued a dog and was denied re-entry to save his niece. A nurse who sheltered children in a church attic while the waters rose. At the back, a folded page. Torn from another notebook. The handwriting was familiar. Mila's. Just 4 words, in pencil. I knew he'd come. The soldier stared. Rain blurred the edges. But not the meaning. He closed the notebook carefully. Slipped it into his coat. The train hissed onto the platform behind him. Doors opened. He didn't board. Not yet. He walked out of the station instead, into the city that had once tried to forget. Because now he knew something deeper. The most powerful stories are the ones we carry when no one else is looking. And sometimes, the ones who hand them to us arrive in silence. And leave the same way. The walls were painted soft gray, the kind of color you don't notice, but feel. The air inside was cool, still, filled with the faint scent of paper, wood, and time being honored. The building had once been a storage unit. Now, it was something else entirely. A place where names lived. The Children's Safety and Memory Center stood just outside city limits, far from the marble steps of City Hall, away from the offices and camera crews. There were no press releases. No ribbon cuttings. Just a sign over the door. No one left off the map. Inside, the first room was small. Shelves of books, notebooks, drawings, all categorized by zone, year, storm, and silence. A wall display held old evacuation maps layered over new ones. Routes redrawn in bold. The missing streets now visible. In the far room, the largest one, stood the wall. Hand-carved. Dozens, hundreds, of names. Each one engraved slowly by volunteers, survivors, and those who remembered. And near the center, surrounded by flowers and folded paper giraffes, was hers. Mila Brenner. No plaque. No story. Just her name. Because a name, when remembered, is its own kind of justice. The soldier, now retired, but still wearing his boots like memory, stood in front of that wall. In his hands, a small letter, folded twice. He opened it, quietly. The handwriting was neat. Older now, but familiar. Miles. She'd be proud of you. Not because of the courtroom. Or the map. But because you came back for her. Even if it was late. I'm teaching now. Art. Every kid gets a notebook on the first day. Every notebook has a name inside, not theirs. Hers. Mila. So they remember how important it is to be seen. Thought you'd want to know. M*****. He smiled. Soft. Tired. Full. The door opened behind him. A small group entered, children. Maybe 8, maybe 10 years old. They laughed too loudly, jostled each other. One of them broke away and walked up to him. She pointed to a map pinned near the wall. Did you draw this? She asked. He knelt beside her. No, he said. But I helped fix it. She tilted her head. Why was it broken? He hesitated. Then answered carefully. Because someone thought some people didn't matter. The girl blinked. But they do. He nodded. They do now. She smiled, that wild, untamed smile only children can offer, and skipped away. He stood slowly and walked into the side room. It was smaller, lined with low tables, old radios, coloring books, and a wide digital display screen that allowed children to build their own safe zones. Draw a map. Name a place. Somewhere they'd want to be found. On one wall, pinned above eye level, was a drawing. Crumpled, repaired with tape, but carefully displayed. The house. The window. The sun. The swing set. And in the window, for the first time in any version, two figures. A girl. And someone standing beside her. He reached out and touched the glass. Just once. Then turned away. In the hallway, new parents arrived. Volunteers handed out flashlights, notebooks, maps of evacuation routes designed by survivors. He passed a table where a boy sat sketching with wide, looping lines. The boy looked up and held something out. A note. The soldier took it carefully. You found me. No name. No explanation. But he understood. He smiled gently and tucked it into his coat, beside the journal, the old photo, and the names he carried in silence. As he left the building, wind stirred the leaves across the path. He paused and looked back. The center's windows glowed faintly. Safe. Warm. Real. Children ran across the lawn. A girl held up her drawing to the sky, her own map, full of bright lines and big red X's that said here. And here. And here, too. He watched her trace her finger across the page and say something softly. And though he couldn't hear the words, he knew exactly what she meant. The last line of Mila's journal echoed as he walked away. Nowhere is outside the rescue zone. And finally, it was true.